Hi. Fear not. That was just a soccer ball. It wasn't a head. Today we're going to be talking about a woman named Mountain Goat and a man who's named Follows Horse. So this is actually Jael, and Jael's name is means mountain goat. The scripture is, "Turn aside, my master, turn aside to me, do not be afraid." Well, as you can see from that illustration with the soccer ball and the tent stake and the hammer, he should have been afraid. This was a man who was already very afraid. Let me give you a little context. God had punished his children for being evil, and he enslaved them for about 20 years. The Canaanites ruled over them with almost 1,000 chariots. They would sweep through. They would take anything they wanted. It was an impossible place to farm, trade, travel. They lived in terror for a couple decades. And then the Lord heard their cry. God can hear your cry. And he can free you in unlikely ways. So there was a lack of leadership problem, or you could say leadership in unexpected places. Deborah was a prophetess, a ruler, a kind of a leader of the people when there was a gap, for sure, and she did a great job. She told Barak to go gather up 10,000 men from the surrounding area and go up to the mountain right before the plain, where they use this dry river bed as a racetrack with the chariots. They just terrorize people there. It would look like a place that would be an advantage to have a chariot. Well, Deborah knew a lot. God had told her that it wasn't actually going to be a man that was going to kill. It wasn't going to be this general that was going to kill the general of the Canaanites, the guy whose name means following horses. Sisera, mispronouncing his name. I can't read my own writing. Anyways, but Barak was afraid to go into battle anyway. So she went with him and the 10,000 men before them. And knowing that God was going to do the work in this battle, his angels were going to go before him, that somehow this was going to work out because it was God's will. This Canaanite general that had made a living of this enslavement that wasn't at his hand but was at the Lord's hand, he confidently got all his polished chariots down there, his iron metal chariots down there into the riverbed, and he was ready for battle. And then the unlikely happened, and that was God sent a miracle. Torrent rain, chariots stuck in mud, drownings, vanquishing, and people only one person was able to escape. That's the general. He's all muddy, running up into the encampment of where Jael had her tent. Now, they were there because of her husband. Her husband, Heber, was actually a trader in a way. He kind of, whoever was winning, he was trading to and doing services for. So at the time, the Canaanites were up, so he was probably doing things like maintaining weaponry, things like that. Well, as it turns out, a lot of people think, and so do I, that Jael remained faithful to God throughout this time. They were descendants of the in-laws of Moses, and had come into the land and kind of were nomadic and made a living moving around. So whenever the tent needed to move around, it was actually the women's work to pull these tents up and stake them. And I'm sure they had, because they made a living sharpening weaponry, they probably had very sharp stakes, sharper than mine, that went through the soccer ball, that's for sure. That was an old soccer ball. Don't worry, people that love the beautiful game. So you can imagine the general terrified, never seen anything like this, having the fear of God hunt him down, having his army vanquished. The technology at the time was invincible, and yet God had showed how silly it was, and God had chased him up that ravine up to where the tents were, and Jael saw that opportunity. Now, whether she saw it right away or not, I don't know, but this is what she said. She said, "Turn aside, my master. Turn aside to me. Do not be afraid." He was a man that was afraid. And she talked him into her tent, which is really unusual. If he's going to stay, he's going to stay, not going to stay in a married man's, not going to stay in her tent. That wouldn't have been appropriate and was very dishonorable. So everything he was doing was the wrong thing. Everything he was doing was wrong. And he was made comfortable, tucked in with this really thick rug. She had given him some warm goat's milk. Isn't that interesting that here she is doing the most unlikely thing, like mountain goats do, which is her name, and even providing milk to him to relax him, to send him to sleep. She went to the doorway to make sure that no one else would come in, and then before you know it, it turned around and did what I did to that soccer ball. And some people believe, it's really unclear, that she was a follower of God, and nevertheless, God used her as a tool. And just like was prophesied by Deborah, that God had told Deborah that a woman would be killing him, and that's what happened. Now, in this case, fear not. So this man had no fear, and God scared him. He was scared right out of battle, and she talked him into the tent, saying, "Turn aside to me. Do not be afraid." Be careful that we are afraid of the right things, fear of the Lord, and use that correctly in God's will. So, fear not that God's will be done in the most unlikely of places. In this case, by a mountain goat of a nomad, led by prophetess women, strong women in the Bible that were stepping up in ways that God wanted them to step up, and a people that had realized that they wanted back into God's graces and cried out to him, and God listened. So however we draw our lessons from this unusual account, let's do so.